This church can be justly proud. We've been flying a rainbow flag for what, 20 years? Now we need to draw the circle wider still and include everyone who's on the whole LGBTQIA2S plus spectrum. That's a mouthful. And the newer Progress Pride flag represents most of them. I'll tell you what all the letters stand for. We often shorten them to LGBTQ plus for convenience, but there's a reason for all of them. They each stand for a whole population. Sandy and Mal are going to point them out on the Progress Pride flag while I talk. The old rainbow stripes stand for everyone who's LGBTQ plus, and also specifically for LG and B, standing for lesbian, gay, and bisexual. That's about who you love or are attracted to. The newer letters, not all of which are individually symbolized on the flag, are mostly about who you are. T is for transgender, the white, pink, and blue, meaning having a gender identity different from the sex on your original birth certificate. Q stands for queer, an umbrella term for a wide range of sexual orientations and gender identities and expressions. Or Q can be for questioning. I is for intersex in the circle, meaning any of a wide range of natural variations in sex traits that can include chromosomes, hormones, genitalia, internal reproductive organs, and more. A is for asexual or agendered, not having sexual feelings or not having a gender identity at all. 2S stands for two-spirit or for any other indigenous designation. In many indigenous cultures, what colonizer cultures would consider gender nonconforming and would stigmatize is fully accepted and often revered. The plus is important too. It represents what we didn't mention or what we don't yet understand. And finally, the black and brown stripes on the flag remind us that LGBTQIA plus people of color suffer even more discrimination and harm than others. Thank you, Mal and Sandy. Just two more gender definitions. Being cisgender or cis means having a gender identity that does correspond to the sex on your original birth certificate. It's the opposite of trans. Being non-binary means not being at one end or the other of an either-or masculine, feminine binary. It means being somewhere along a more nuanced spectrum. Along with gender nonconforming, it's often subsumed under the umbrella of trans. I'm going to tell several stories, first my own in a little depth, then move to some more facts and some snippets of other stories. My parents named me Dorothy, but they never once called me that. They called me Dody, which I've since learned is an ungendered, unisex name widely used by African, Arabic, and Hebrew peoples, in addition to its use as a diminutive for Dorothy and a Scottish diminutive for George. The other thing my parents did right for me was they let me play with whatever and whomever I liked, and they hardly ever forced me into girly clothes during my preschool years in the 1940s. I didn't hit gender troubles till 6th grade, when I was 11. Some girls were approaching puberty, and they were sure into hairstyles, flirting with boys, and talking about someday growing breasts. I sure wasn't doing any of that. And my old friends among the boys were now flirting with the other girls. The only boy I could still play marbles with was 2 years younger than me. I remember one perfect day, the summer between 6th and 7th grade, sailing with my parents in a dinghy, sitting in the bow with a light wind caressing my bare torso. I'll never forget how wonderful that sail was. Probably because with all the puberty talk fresh in my ears, I knew this freedom wouldn't last. My mom gradually noticed I was not eager for womanhood. I dreaded it. I guess she thought my early childhood was just a stage I'd leave behind. I cringed every time she said, "Your father loved seeing you in that dress." This was the 50s and early 60s. Skirts were required at school, but I was back in pants the minute I got home. Fast forward to 1969. I was 3 years out of college, married to a man who was finishing law school while I worked at a pet store and Head Start. I encountered the word lesbian in Mary McCarthy's novel, The Group. That was my first awareness that my mom's version of the world might not be the only way to be. My husband and I made great folk music together, but the rest of our marriage was falling apart. By the early 70s, I was divorced. I came out as a lesbian, though I really didn't like women-only spaces very much, nor the term lesbian. When I performed at the National Women's Music Festival, what actually impressed me most was seeing some women with beards. In 1976, I changed my name legally to Dody. I was writing songs, and to copyright them, I learned I had to use my legal name. I sure wasn't going to use my birth name. My modest fame as a singer-songwriter didn't last long, but my authentic name has lived on, and only in the past 5 years, as I've been coming out as transmasculine non-binary, am I beginning to understand the significance of claiming my name. Now, here's why I'll be saying more about trans people this morning than about cisgendered LGBT people. We're in much more danger for now. Brian Bond, head of Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, PFLAG, wrote the preface to this amazing group, this amazing book, Authentic Selves, published in 2023 by Skinner House. He's a cis gay man and an ally to gender nonconforming folks like me. He says, "When I came out, my family supported me. The more of us who came out, the more society moved forward. People started to acknowledge gay, lesbian, and bisexual people. Our work was honored. Our marriages finally legal, a major step forward. But with that step forward came a fast and furious backlash, not against cisgendered, lesbian, gay, and bi people, but against transgender and non-binary people. The goal of this backlash is to legislate trans and non-binary people out of existence. But nothing can erase the identities and lives of trans and non-binary people. It can only make trans people more vulnerable to harm as they try to live their lives," unquote. And harking back to Stonewall, Treyandre Carmel Valentine, head of the Mass Transgender Political Coalition, said 2 months ago, "I stand here on the shoulders and graves of those who came before. Trans people, femmes, and non-binary people, black and brown people, who risked their lives in their unapologetic authenticity, in their pain, their joy, their complexity, their resistance, and their daring to dream bigger because we deserve better." I recently heard a non-binary spokesperson for the Boston organization Speak Out say they personally have asked lots of LGBTQ people what they would do if there were magically no more hostility and prejudice against us. There were lots of different answers, but all of the young people had just one answer: "I'd go home." Parents of a trans woman who was forced by her high school at age 16 to withdraw from school to spare other students from having to go to school with a queer. The parents at first had a hard time themselves accepting her gender, but today they say, "I want other parents to know that it could be a life or death decision if you don't handle it right. Love your child. Carry the same love you had when they first came out of the womb and you first saw them." Now, if the threats to trans people seem pretty remote to you personally, remember Nazi Germany. Today, trans folks are among the first targets, but we won't be the last. If trans people can be deprived of all rights, other moves will follow. I think it behooves everyone who opposes tyranny to heed the famous words of Martin Niemöller, whom Reverend Bo quoted last week, but I was already planning to. I'll give you just the first and last lines. "First they came for the communists, but I did not speak up, for I was not a communist," etc. "Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." Please realize how important it is for everyone to speak up now for gender nonconforming people. I should mention some people who, though they are lesbian feminists, have no intention of standing up for anyone who is gender nonconforming. 2 Junes ago, the National Women's Law Center wished us happy Pride, don't be a TERF. TERF, T-E-R-F, stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist. Think J.K. Rowling. The center went on to say, most TERFs subscribe to the lie that trans people are a threat to women. They are pushing for laws to create bathroom bans, student athlete bans, bans on appropriate health care for trans youth, etc. TERF thinking exacerbates the harms trans people experience, who are way more likely to be victims of violence than cis LGBT people. Murders of trans people in the US nearly doubled in the 4 years between 2017 and 21. It's a dangerous time to be trans in America, and TERFs add fuel to the fire every day. Trying to control people's bodies ends up with all of us being policed if we don't conform to ever narrower norms. If history has taught us anything, it's that an attack on one of us is an attack on us all. End quote. I guess I need to address the question, but is being trans real? I want to just say, duh. And the science keeps supporting that answer in more and more ways. I recommend an article. I just read in Medium. I brought copies, and I can email the piece if you need, if there aren't enough copies. Long story short, from the mid-20th century through today, the sciences are catching up with what trans people have always known. Neuroscience, family medicine, genetics, endocrinology, epigenetics are all discovering how deeply real trans reality is. But I like this take from a young non-binary adult. People spend way too much time trying to figure out why trans people are trans. So many people feel like they need to understand everything before they can offer acceptance and love. If you start first with love and acceptance, your understanding will grow from there. Now, here's a plea to those of you who would be allies. One simple way to show support for gender nonconforming people is to wear your pronouns on your name tag. We all have pronouns. We all use pronouns. I know you would hate being misgendered. I get misgendered a lot. Seeing people wearing name tags raises everyone's awareness of pronouns, whether she, her, or he, him, or whatever else. And it feels so affirming to those of us who are trans and non-binary. And if you have a trans friend or relative, put their correct name and pronouns into your phone. That will help you remember to answer correctly when your phone rings. I can't end without what UUA President Sophia Bettencourt said in April. Last week, the White House issued a presidential proclamation that labeled gender identity a threat to children. That proclamation perpetuates harmful, baseless rhetoric that endangers trans lives and undermines families. The UUA rejects this hateful framing and reaffirms our commitment to the inherent worthiness and belovedness of transgender people. That is an expression of our Unitarian Universalist faith. This is a moment to deepen our solidarity and take action. Consider supporting trans-led and affirming organizations. Our faith compels us to protect one another fiercely and to show up with love that cannot be shaken, unquote. So I have a question I want to leave you with. What makes it difficult for you, each of you, to wrap your head and heart around all this? We all have voices in our head with messages from our past, and Lord knows there are loud voices today yelling in our ears. But please live with this question. What makes it difficult for you personally as you struggle to reconcile new learning with old voices? Thank you, and happy Pride.
That was beautiful, by the way. Actually, everything about that, what Dody said, and what the song as well. But I just have to say that it is absolutely true, everything that was said by Dody, in fact, in a far more beautiful manner than I ever could have. It's also worth noting, though, that many trans people all across the continental United States, as my experience has been, is that they are just humans. They all have different ways of coping. They all have different ways of adapting to their individual circumstances and situations. I, as well, have a unique way of doing things. And I've noticed that cis people, on average, have about 3 faces. One for work, one for home life, and one for strangers and maybe even friends, maybe even a 4th. But I, myself, often have a different face for every person that I meet. I, a trans person, will wear anything from a blazer to a skirt, depending on the person that I am talking to and the context behind it. And the important part about all of these things is that it's far harder in the social environment that we live in to just exist within that social norm of being a regular cis person. I dislike the usage of the word regular there. We all are humans, and we all are people. I've experienced a lot of problematic encounters through my life, and many things have discouraged me altogether from coming out to many people. In fact, that coming out prayer thing actually touched many parts of my own heart, as many of them have lied to me and my friends and so forth. And I just have to say, it's beautiful, and it's amazing to see support, whether directly, indirectly, or just a hand on a heart in my general direction. It's truly amazing, and education around this is not only welcome, but very appreciated. I thank you all.